So this is part 2 of my Mercury through the signs series. I already did the first 6 signs, so Aries through Virgo. I'm gonna link the part 1 in the description of this video. So now we're gonna talk about Libra all the way through Pisces. So we're gonna start with Libra, Mercury in Libra. So Mercury in Libra is a little bit similar to Mercury in Taurus, and that's just because Libra and Taurus are both naturally ruled by Venus. So the things that they have in common specifically relate to interests in art, interests in things that are aesthetically pleasing, things that taste good. So Libra, similar to Taurus, it's all about the 5 senses. So Libra, Mercury individuals have a really good understanding of things that look good, feel good, things that taste really good, things that smell really good, and they're very easily stimulated by their environment. It kind of reminds me, not to be too silly, but it kind of reminds me of that SpongeBob meme where that fish is like food, water, atmosphere. That's very Mercury and Libra. Like the tone, the atmosphere, it needs to be something that is peaceful, soothing, and calm. They need, not so much, it's not about them needing like a neutral environment per se, but they need an environment that is not overly demanding, not overly stimulating. They can't really handle things that are like overtly busy in terms of what's going on around them. Now, when it comes to like socially, they're very well equipped to handle social settings. And that's just because Libra rules over relationships while Mercury rules over communication. So people with Mercury and Libra, they're pretty good at being able to read the room, kind of similar to Mercury and Gemini. They tend to have a lot of different friends. Socializing is very much a strong suit for them. Now, in socializing being such a strong suit, this is where Mercury and Libra gets a little bit tricky. So because Libra is of course ruled by the scales, it's all about balance, fairness, justice. Sometimes these people can be fence sitters. So they might have a hard time being controversial, like stating an opinion that they feel, but maybe they're afraid that if they say it, it's going to be polarizing or controversial, or it's going to, rub people the wrong way. They can kind of just refrain. So in a favorable expression, someone with Libra Mercury can learn how to state their opinions with tact and diplomacy. But in an unfavorable case, you kind of get the Libra Mercury that is overtly demanding, or maybe not demanding, but like kind of confrontational, similar to Mercury and Aries, because they do Aries and Libra oppose. So they have intersecting qualities and they can both be really, really passionate. So you can have the Mercury and Libra that is overtly passionate to the point where they might turn some people off. They can be a little bit extreme, maybe not allowing much room for nuance or the grayness of life. Then you have the fence sitter Mercury and Libra individual who basically will refrain from being too honest because they don't want to ruffle feathers. They want to keep things cool and placid and calm. And these are the Libra Mercury individuals that do really well kind of with like social politics. So these are the Mercury and Libra is very much kind of politician energy. So what you're really striving for is a balance of these two. You're striving for a state of existence where you can communicate your truths and be honest and be passionate, but communicate it in a way that is not going to turn people off. Like you want to harness that sweet side of Libra. You want to harness the Venusian energy. So you don't want to be too brash. You don't want to be too abrasive. You want to make sure that you're stating your opinions and you're communicating with tact and diplomacy and sophistication without being too kind of neutral, if that makes sense. And that kind of brings me to my next point about Libra Mercury individuals is that they can adopt a people-pleasing attitude. They want to be likable. They want people to enjoy being around them. And this can come kind of at the sacrifice of what they're really thinking or how they're really feeling. This is why Libra Mercury can sometimes have kind of a superficial stereotype to it, like, oh, they only really talk about fluff. They only really talk about things on the surface. If you're around a Libra Mercury individual and they're only talking about like surface level things, one, it's probably because they don't trust you. It might also be that they're trying to just kind of put on, they're kind of entering their, no, I'm not making fun of these people, but kind of entering like a sorority girl mindset where they're presenting their best self and they're trying to be neutral and non-controversial. So in that, they can kind of take on a people-pleasing approach where they're so about their relationships that they're just here to kind of serve you. It's a little similar to like that Virgo energy, where sometimes they feel like they have to earn love and affection, so they will go the extra mile in a way that they can kind of abandon themselves and their own needs and their own thoughts and feelings and opinions. That's kind of an unfavorable potential there. Now, a really good thing about Mercury and Libra, and this is similar to Mercury and Virgo, they're very detail oriented. They're very observant. And this comes back to, again, being really socially aware. But in being so observant and being so detail oriented, they can be perfectionists. So Libra Mercury individuals, they can be a lot more neurotic than people might think. Everything needs to be perfect. And that goes back to the five senses. Everything needs to feel correct. Everything needs to feel good. Everything needs to look perfect. If something is like out of alignment, if something is imbalanced, or there's not like a proper balance just in the room, whatever it may be, they'll feel that, and it can be really, really grating to them. So it's not uncommon for Mercury Libra individuals to have like obsessive compulsive disorder. And now let me clarify, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional, not a psychologist. I'm just a professional astrologer. These are just trends and patterns I've noticed. If you want medical advice, this is not that, right? You got to go to a medical professional. But anyway, this is just something I've seen with them. They can take on a really obsessive approach to life in general. And when it comes to their relationships, they can take on kind of like a codependent approach. So if you have Libra Mercury, or you know someone, you might find that when you spend time with them, they adopt certain things based on who they're around. So they can kind of slowly absorb people's style or people's mannerisms, the things people say. It's not that they don't have an identity of their own, but they can become just a little bit, it's Libra, it's relationships. They can slowly kind of morph into the people that they hang around. Now, here's a really prominent skill people with Libra Mercury have, especially when they learn how to really harness and kind of better understand their diplomatic nature. These people just have an innate understanding of what is right and what is wrong. So it kind of goes back to, again, being able to understand when something is like not in alignment, whether it be something materially, something tangibly, like decor, for example, or something socially. So they have a really good understanding of what is morally correct, what is ethical, and this can make them really good judges. It can, again, going back to like being very political, being a politician, being a community figure, a community leader. They very much speak up for others. They speak for the people. They represent the people. They make great advocates. They make great mediators. They make really good therapists. They're great problem solvers. And in being like mediators and therapists in a way, they know how to help other people through like relationship crises and dramas. So they're really good at navigating social dilemmas. Again, going back to being diplomatic when it comes to their social life. Okay, now we're going to talk about Mercury and Scorpio. So Mercury and Scorpio, it's very similar to Mercury and Cancer in a lot of ways, and I've talked about this in my part 1 Mercury video. Mercury and Scorpio individuals, they keep a log. They forget absolutely nothing. They're extremely, extremely aware of what's happening around them, and they have a really hard time forgetting and an even harder time in some cases forgiving. So they keep a log. They're very like, if you do something and it's like red flag, they're keeping a mental note of that because they want to make sure that you can't get them. They don't want you to have any type of ammunition or anything that you can weaponize against them. So the way that they communicate with others tends to be pretty calculated. It's really hard for these people to open up. People with Scorpio Mercury, they tend to have trust issues. They tend to be a little more paranoid than the average person. They're suspicious. They're just suspicious. So you really have to work really, really hard to earn their trust. So someone with Scorpio Mercury is like locked in if they're honest with you, if they're vulnerable around you, if they're expressing their emotions, if they're telling you their secrets. That's when you know they're locked in. So it's like if you know someone with Mercury and Scorpio, don't be surprised if it takes a little bit to get them to open up to you. And that's kind of the weird thing too, is you can feel really vulnerable around these people because you'll be opening up to them. They make really good, in a favorable expression, They make really good secret keepers, and they're happy to help you through your emotional dramas. So, you know, you can open up any can of worms around them and they will help you work through it. They're emotionally very healing to be around. But when it comes to them, they can just be really hush hush. Now, in having a hard time forgetting and forgiving, in an unfavorable expression, these people can be really vengeful. So again, they're really calculated, they're really methodical, they're playing the long game. So they're not usually ones to act impulsively. Now, there are exceptions. When it comes to their romantic life, especially if they have Scorpio Sun, Venus, Mars, these people can kind of devote a lot of that impulsive nature that they do have to that area of life. They can be kind of impulsive romantically. They can attract soap opera level type of romantic circumstances. But in all other aspects of life, especially when it comes to their goals, their ambitions, their professional life, that's when they put on their calculated hat and they make moves in a very methodical way. And they don't really like to tell anybody what's going on. So they also tend to keep certain areas of their life, like their professional goals, like their aspirations and their finances. Those are things that they keep secretive. They don't like to unveil those things to even their like close friends. They are still very selective about what they say to people. You know, like they move in silence. They don't want everyone to know their moves or what they're doing because again, they're kind of suspicious, they're paranoid, they're afraid that someone's gonna sabotage them or pose some type of threat to their goals. Now, in being so calculated and methodical, these people are sleuthy. So if you have a Scorpio Mercury friend and you're trying to find dirt on someone, this is the person you call. Like they're gonna have that information for you in 5 minutes flat. They are the detectives, they are the interrogators, they're the people that are gonna be able to find out anything about anybody, even people that they don't even know on a personal level. And these are also the friend that like, if you have a problem with someone, so do they. If someone has hurt you in any way and someone with Scorpio Mercury loves you, they want to hurt that person. And it brings me to my next point, which is Scorpio Mercury individuals, they're not only extremely stubborn, but they know what to say, similar to Cancer Mercury, they know what to say to hurt you. So you want to be really mindful if you have some type of verbal confrontation or issue with someone who has Scorpio Mercury. They can sting you, you know, they're the Scorpion, so they can sting you and it can really, really hurt. And not only will they sting you, but they're the type of people that'll sting you and then block you and you don't even have a chance to like respond or, you know, say your side of the story. That's kind of a frustrating thing about Scorpio Mercury. They can be so stubborn and so fixed that it can kind of be hard for them to accept nuance. They're very extreme. So if there's a misunderstanding, it is tricky to hash it out with them because they can be very dead set on what they believe is true and that's it. Oh, well, you did this thing and this must have been your intention, so F you. But you're like, no, it was an accident, like that wasn't my intention, but they don't really want to hear it. So, and that can be more kind of an unevolved Scorpio Mercury expression, but it is worth noting that is how they can be at times. So you want to be really cautious when you're communicating with them because they can get kind of riled up relatively quickly. And even worse, sometimes they can be offended and upset, but they don't even tell you. They just start to withdraw. So my point with this is that people with Scorpio Mercury sometimes can have a hard time, you know, with social conflict when it comes to actually just communicating and hashing it out. They can go cold, they can go ghost, they can change without really letting you know why or what. You know, they don't leave much room to like actually talk through the issue. That's kind of an issue with them. Now, these people are very intuitive. So that's definitely a benefit to having Scorpio Mercury. They're very intuitive, they're very sensitive, they're really emotionally aware with what's going on around them. So it's not just the Scorpio moons. I know what you're probably thinking, oh, Scorpio Mercury sounds a lot like Scorpio moon. They're very similar in a lot of ways. And people with Scorpio Mercury, they're just as like emotionally in tune. It's just that they are also a lot more, I don't want to say that they're more calculated than the Scorpio moon people are, but they're more willing to like detach and shut off. That's kind of the tricky thing about them. Scorpio moons are like a little more, they have a harder time like cutting cords. Scorpio Mercury can be a little bit more cold and a little bit more hurtful, I think. I still love Scorpio energy, so I'm not trying to disparage them by any means, but they can be really tricky to deal with. However, they are really intuitive and they have a lot of great insight. They're very good at giving advice. They're also the type of friend, they're like a ride or die. You know what I mean? Like you can tell them all your secrets, you can tell them whatever. They're not one to really judge. They will keep a log, of course, but they're not really gonna judge you. And, you know, Scorpio Mercury also more prone to mental health issues. Again, I'm not a doctor and you need to see a medical professional for that type of, you know, this is for entertainment purposes only, but they're more prone to mental health issues. And not only that, but they can have mental health issues that are a lot more stigmatized. So I'm talking like personality disorder. I'm talking like psychosis, episodes of psychosis, hallucinations. Like they can have some of the mental health disorders that are not as freely discussed or as welcomed by society. So they're very intense mentally. They're very intense and it can be a very isolating experience for them in their brain. And that's part of why they can be really suspicious of others, is they're very afraid of opening up and then having it used against them or being shamed or judged for it. Now I want to end it on this because that was all very serious. People with Scorpio Mercury are so smart. They're so intelligent. These are like the chess players of society. Like you're playing checkers, they're playing chess. They're so smart. These are also the plastic surgeons of society. It's similar to Mercury and Taurus in that these are the people that can kind of emotionally detach a little bit. The fixed signs are all kind of like that, where they can very much like, because they're emotionally congested. So it takes a lot to break through to them emotionally. So these are like the doctors and the surgeons, and these are the people that can enter fields or practices that require them to just be laser focused on their goal. Emotion and personal involvement kind of have to be shut off so that they can do their job. All right, let's talk about Sagittarius Mercury. Sagittarius Mercury individuals have horrible foot and mouth syndrome. Now, the benefit to this is they're very honest to a fault. The distressing thing about this, especially if you are heavy earth sign influenced and you have a Sag Mercury friend, they can say the wrong thing at the wrong time and it can be a little bit embarrassing, especially if you are heavy Virgo influenced. If you have a Sag Mercury best friend, God bless, I wish you all the best. It's hard sometimes to be around these people because they just don't care what others think. And that's very freeing. It's very liberating. Like it's just hard for people who are a little too wrapped up in what others are thinking. It can be triggering to be around a Sagittarius Mercury individual. But if you are like just down with that, whatever, you can have a lot of fun. Like these people are really fun to be around. They're also really philosophical. So people with Sag Mercury, they are kind of like the nomadic wanderers when it comes to insight and knowledge. So you have to understand Sagittarius as a sign, it's naturally ruled by Jupiter, which rules over travel. Mercury also has a lot to do with travel and exploration. So this is like a double dose of travel, educational, cultural energy. So these people, they're the historians of the world. They're the geographers. Like they are just so in tune with what's going on in society, but on a global scale. They know so much about everything and everybody. Like they know, not only do they know a lot of people, like they have so many connections, even connections across the globe. They know like everyone in history and pop culture. Like they're little trivia buffs, similar to Gemini Mercury. So being around them is fascinating because they know so much information. These people can also make friends really easily. Like they can go on a trip to a country where they don't even speak the language and they make a brand new friend and keep in touch. Like that's the other thing, is once you're friends with these people, it doesn't really matter how deep the friendship is or the connection, like they'll keep up with you, they'll keep tabs on you. And I know that might be kind of contradicting to maybe certain things you've heard about Sag Mercury people, which is they can be flaky and flighty, and I'm not saying that's not true to an extent, but it's almost like their flightiness and flakiness is what gives them the room to maintain so many of their social relationships, because you have to realize people who are friends with everyone, it's really impossible to establish like a deep relationship with that many people, but they don't mind. Like they understand that every friend in your life, every connection serves its own purpose. Not everything has to be like this tight bond. Like it's okay to have more, I don't want to say superficial, because I don't even think it's superficial, but it's okay to just like have friends that you go out and party with. And then it's okay to have friends that you have intimate nights in with. And Sag Mercury knows that very well. So they're willing to be friends with anybody and everybody because they know that there's something to learn from everybody. So these people are really interesting to be around. Now, these people tend to have really tricky mental health things going on upstairs. So they deal with a lot of existential crises. Sagittarius Mercury individuals, especially if they have other Sag energy in their chart, they tend to grow up in an environment where they had to learn to be really independent and self-reliant from a young age. Not only that, but a lot of them have abandonment issues, and that's what leads to attachment issues. That's what kind of inspires that nomadic state of life, the need to travel, the need to explore. They lack a sense of home. A lot of these people lack a sense of belonging, which is also why they're so driven by like philosophy and spirituality and just kind of figuring out what it is they believe in, religion for some. They are on a quest to figure out where they belong in the world, and that includes being on a quest to figure out what their belief systems are. So these people on a mental level can struggle with feelings of like nihilism at times, like nothing matters, what's going on in the world. They can feel really alone. And then sometimes they kind of try to push that away, and they try to dismiss it through adventure and travel and exploration. And that's certainly a good way to like explore what it is that you might believe in. But sometimes Sag Mercury individuals struggle doing like the emotional work, I guess I should say. It doesn't mean they're not introspective. People with Mercury and Sagittarius, they're very introspective. They think a lot. They can enter that like hermit phase of life where they can feel very isolated, but emotionally it can be really hard for them to deal with those feelings. So they have an easier time like thinking through things, but not really feeling through things. Another tricky thing about people with Sag Mercury is a lot of them can have commitment issues. This doesn't just mean commitment with their relationships, although that can definitely apply, which is why they are able to have so many friends and such an active social life for some of them, is because they know that if they spread themselves thin socially, then no one can demand anything of them. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you're only used to seeing me once a year, so like whatever. You don't expect anything of me, that's great. And then you have the Sag Mercury individuals who kind of live more in isolation, but that's like a whole different thing, but still commitment issues, intimacy issues. But it's also commitment issues when it comes to like following through on a goal. People with Sag Mercury, they're very lofty, they're very idealistic, they're very imaginative, but they can have a really hard time following through. So they have all these ideas, they're bustling with ideas, but they can be pulled in so many different directions that it's really hard to like mentally hone in and focus on a set goal. And this is what also kind of leads them towards like beliefs and philosophies and even cultural practices, spiritual practices. They're a mixed bag. So they kind of take from every little philosophy or study or practice that rings true to them, and then they just mash it all into one. So even the way that they go about their beliefs is like, they can have a hard time following through on one. They just kind of pick and choose what they like. And that can definitely translate to their goals and aspirations and their ambitions. It's mentally hard to focus on one thing. So it's not uncommon for Sag Mercury to have like ADHD, or just, they can be very neurodivergent, including on like a social level, because again, they don't have the same social hangups that like maybe you or I do. Social etiquette is like not really a thing to them. They don't get it. It doesn't compute. They're just like showing up. They're like, here I am. I'm just going to be me. If you don't like it, whatever. It's not my problem. They just don't care. And it reminds me also of like the Shania Twain song, like that don't impress me much. They're not really impressed by like frills and like you don't have to put on airs when you're around them. Just be yourself. Okay, let's talk about Capricorn Mercury. I have a soft spot for people with Capricorn Mercury because, I don't know, I have a Capricorn stellium, so maybe that's it. I don't have Capricorn Mercury, but I have a lot of Capricorn placements. And I have a soft spot for them because I just know it must be really exhausting to have Mercury in Capricorn. So the benefit of Mercury in Capricorn is these people are really, really smart. They're very sophisticated. They are also really goal-oriented. So they have a lot of different goals and aspirations bustling in their mind. Now, the tricky thing is their social life. People with Capricorn Mercury can struggle on a social level. And that is because they take everything really, really seriously, and a lot of people don't. This can be really hard in school, like in relationships with their peers growing up, like elementary school, middle school, high school. It can feel really exhausting because if you have Capricorn Mercury, odds are when you popped out of the womb, you just were already like aware of what was going on. You were insightful, born with so much innate wisdom. And it's so aggravating growing up with people around you who lack all of that. People who make decisions and you're like, why are you doing that? Like, are you stupid? No offense. It's just being Capricorn Mercury, I just know is really exhausting because everyone around you in your brain is like kind of an idiot, and you try to give people advice. You're like, hey, here's what you should do instead. Or you might even have gone through something similar at a younger age, of course, because people with Cap heavy placements, they go through a lot from a young age. You might have gone through something and you're watching your friend about to make the same mistake and you're like, wait, no, don't do that. Let me tell you my experience with that. But your friend brushes you off and is like, no, whatever. So it can kind of feel like you're trying to warn everybody of really important information, but no one cares. Or everyone's kind of discounting your knowledge and insight because, maybe you're young or whatever. So I just know it's really agitating to have Capricorn Mercury for that reason. You're very mature, you're wise beyond your years, and no one else can catch up with you. No one can keep up. And growing up, like when you're younger, it can feel like no one values your insight. The good news is that will change. Like with age, Capricorn placements get easier. You will start to be valued. You will start to be validated for the insight, the wisdom you have. But then you enter a different phase of annoyance. So when you have Capricorn Mercury, when you're younger, you're kind of overlooked. And that's Capricorn placements in general. I don't care. Sun, Moon, Venus, Mars, whatever. Rising. You're overlooked when you're younger. As you get older, people start to realize that you were right, or what you had to say was real and it was true. So then you become the dumpster for everyone else's problems. So now you have a different problem. Now people value your insight so much that they don't leave you alone. And you become Mr. Fix-It, Mrs. Fix-It, whatever. You're the one people go to when they have problems. You're the one people go to when they're crying, wolf or whatever. And that's its own annoying thing. So then you become the problem solver. But by that point in time, when you're older, you have your own problems. You don't care. You're done. You're over it. But you have to be there because they're your friends, whatever. So it's really tricky having Capricorn Mercury. And another thing with Capricorn Mercury, the way you communicate, you're very to the point. You're very honest. You don't really hold back. You might even be kind of confrontational. And it can be puzzling when other people are not that way. Now, there is a Capricorn Mercury that is like an archetype that is a little similar to Libra Mercury, which is sometimes as they age, due to feeling so slighted in youth, they can take on a kind of political, social outlook. And it's not that they become fence sitters like maybe Libra Mercury can, they become cold. Everything kind of becomes about, well, I'm not going to feel used by you. So I'm going to be the one that gets something out of you. I don't want to call people with Cap Mercury users because that's not what it is. I guess you could call them opportunistic, but they can just become mentally a little bit cold and aloof to the point where their relationships, some of them, they don't value them on an intimate level, but value them in terms of like, how can we mutually benefit for alternative reasons, like professional reasons, for example. So they can kind of be around people and socialize with people they don't even really like for some type of gain. And that's like an unfavorable expression. That's not going to be all of them, but that can happen as a result of like feeling really bruised and burnt in youth on a social level, feeling like they're not accepted by their peers, whatever. Now, Capricorn Mercury people can be really, really bossy. They can be really demanding. They have very high expectations. This is another reason why socially they can struggle. They expect a lot from other people, and they will learn eventually, if they are wise enough, that you just can't. You cannot expect much from others. You really can't. Like, I mean that sincerely. And I don't mean that to be depressing or negative. It's just kind of like a fact of life. You really can't. You have to accept people where they're at. I know it's really hard, but it is what it is. People with Capricorn Mercury, like mentally, they can see people's potential. So it can be hard to accept people for as they are because you're kind of like, wait, no, I see what you could be. And they're not that. And it's really disappointing. So from me to you, a tip is you have to let that go. Like, you have to drop your expectations. You have to accept that people are human, even you. I know you don't want to admit it and it sucks, but even you are human and you're gonna make mistakes. So Mercury in Cap is a little similar to Mercury in Virgo. Very hard on yourself, a lot of unfair expectations on you and for others. So it's like, it's something you gotta confront. Now, the good thing about Cap Mercury is they are really insightful, they are really smart, and they can be funny and creative. I think Cap, placements get overlooked for that. People with Cap Mercury can be very creative, and the earth signs in general have kind of a good grasp on creativity because they're so grounded that they can bring their creations to life. They're really good at manifesting. So they kind of have the willpower, the discipline, and the patience to see something through and push it into reality, like any vision they have. So Capricorn Mercury can actually be really gifted when it comes to creative practices and pursuits, and they can be really funny because they are very observant and they're very kind of like, they see the flaws and the cracks in society, and while that can be annoying, it can make for good comedy. You know what I mean? Like, it can be funny. They can definitely point out little things that other people are aware of, but maybe nobody's actually saying it out loud. So they can be funny. They have a really smart, dry sense of humor. They can even be kind of deadpan at times. Like, if they're making a joke, it can be kind of hard to know if they're joking or being completely serious. And even when they're being completely serious, there's still something kind of funny about it because it's so honest. Okay, let's talk about Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury and Aquarius individuals, they are very eclectic, they're very eccentric. The way that they communicate can be, well, there's a couple things going on here. The way that they communicate can be really unpredictable. Similar to Mercury and Aries in the sense that these people can kind of blow up over nothing. Like, one day, they're in a totally good mood and you can say, oh, the sky, the sunset looks like pink today. It's so beautiful. And they're like, ugh, the sunset is so overrated. Blech. But then the next day you're like, oh, the sunset, it's like pink today. It's so beautiful. You should look at it. And they're like, wow, yeah, it really reminds you that like life is just, we take it for granted. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the other thing about Mercury and Aquarius. They're very, very collectively at one with the state of the world. So these people can be really intuitive, but the intuition that they feel can work more on a global level. So like, these people can predict global events that impact humanity. They can also be very like mentally in tune with just collective discomfort or collective joy. So you have to understand, Aquarius opposes Leo. They have intersecting qualities. So similar to Mercury, Leo individuals, people with Mercury and Aquarius, they love a good celebration. They love a good reason to woohoo and be grateful of life. Now, Mercury and Aquarius, in being kind of unconventional and unpredictable in their speech, it's not uncommon for these people to be neurodivergent. It's not uncommon for them to also have like learning disorders, learning disabilities. That's because Aquarius is a bit dysfunctional and Mercury rules over the brain. So they can kind of, their brain works like backwards almost. But in being so unique in their cognitive thinking, their perspective on life is just so unique and abstract that it's also kind of trippy. Talking to them is like being on acid in a way. So it's interesting to communicate with these people. They have a really unique outlook on life, and it can be, you know, they can be inspirational and inspiring to be around. Now, these people are also really hypocritical. I love them, but they are. They're very hypocritical. They're very contradictory. They don't make a lot of sense at times. Again, it goes back to like the sky being pink. Oh, that's beautiful, or ew, I hate sunsets, disgusting. They can be really contradictory and they can be really hypocritical. So it's, and not just that, but people with Mercury and Aquarius will point out things they don't like about others, that the reason they don't like it is because they see it in themselves and it makes them really uncomfortable. Like they're aware that some of their traits and quirks are really, really annoying and agitating and frustrating. And when they recognize it in others, they feel very threatened. They will go out of their way even to like avoid people who remind them of themselves, because it feels, one, it can feel kind of competitive for them. And two, it can just feel really uncomfortable because they're facing something they don't like in themselves. So it's a really weird mercurial sign. Now, Mercury and Aquarius people, in the way that they communicate and also the interests and things that they are curious about, they have a lot of curiosities. They're all about taboo. They're all about controversy. So they can say things that ruffle feathers and they like it. That's like the weird thing about these people. They kind of like being the one poking holes at just your argument, your thoughts, your opinions. They enjoy having an opinion themselves that is, you know, the unpopular opinion, the controversial opinion, the opinion that others are afraid to say. They enjoy that. And these people can also be, as a result, they can kind of be the outcasts. They can be the underdogs. They can be, it reminds me of that meme, why are you booing me? I'm right. It's like, no, why are you booing me? I'm saying the thing that you're all afraid to say, and you know I'm right. So they can be kind of like outcasts in a way, and that can translate to, or transfer over to like their career, their goals, their aspirations. Like they can embark on pursuits that are, have some type of like controversial edge, or, you know, this kind of a controversial energy to it. They can kind of further push themselves outside the bounds of what is socially acceptable. So these are people that could like go on to work in the adult industry, for example. That's just an example. These are people that have no problem living on the fringe, you know, the fringes of society, whatever. And that's just because the way their mind works. They don't care very much about societal structures and norms, similar to Mercury and Sagittarius. They're just going to live life the way they want, by their own rules and their own boundaries. Now, these people are really, really stubborn. Aquarius is a fixed sign after all. So it's nearly impossible to change their mind. And these people are like some of the biggest, like they will have an opinion that is so irrational and it makes no sense, and they stand by it so firmly. So as much as people like to give Aquarius credit for being logical and rational, and they can be for sure. But again, these people are hypocrites and they're very contradictory, because Aquarius as a sign, there's no consistency. It's very unpredictable. So these people can have really irrational opinions and thoughts and feelings that just make very little sense. Now, I will say a benefit to Mercury and Aquarius individuals, they're very creative in like an abstract, unique way. These are like the modern artists of the world. They're very innovative, and you know, they're an air sign. So certain things are easier for them to get away with. Like these are the people that, yeah, they paint just a black square and somehow it gets put in, you know, the Louvre or whatever, is that what it's called? The museum, that like the It museum, you know what I mean? Like they'll take a can of paint and just splash it on a canvas and it sells for $1 million. Like, these are the they're a little pretentious, you know what I mean? Like, these are the people that they can create something with not too much effort and it just works for them because it's bizarre and it's strange. Like, the more they give into the strangeness and the more that they kind of lean into the fact that life makes no sense and there is no consistency, the more things can kind of work out for them. So that's like a benefit to having Mercury in Aquarius, is just having fun with society, poking holes, you know, or pointing out the holes, really. So that's like the interesting thing about Mercury in Aquarius, and also the benefit of it. I'll also say these people are really unique problem solvers. So again, this kind of goes back to having a unique perspective on the world, a unique approach to, like, you know, making decisions, solving issues. So they have a very unique way of dealing with their problems. And with that, if you have someone with Mercury and Aquarius in your life and you come to them with a problem or you need advice, you can be sure that they're going to give you an out-of-the-box solution that actually works. So these people, a lot of them grow up in kind of like confines. So they grow up in environments where they're limited, similar to like Mercury and Cap. They can have a lot of limits in their life. Anyone with prominent Aquarius, sun, moon, rising, whatever, they grow up within limitations. So they're forced to learn how to be adaptable and to work within boundaries in a way that is innovative and liberating, basically. And similar to Libra Mercury, these people can also be very much for the people. Now, they're more likely to be like the rebellious, you know, wanting to liberate from norms and power structures and things like that. Like, they're more kind of the hippie dippies. But they are similar to Mercury Libra in the sense that they make really good advocates, really good public speakers. They speak for the people. They want to help their communities. They want to help humanity. All right, now we're going to talk about Mercury in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces is a very tricky one. Pisces is a really elusive sign. So when it comes to like relaying information and processing information, lost in translation. Pisces Mercury people can get very lost and very confused in their social correspondences. So you can tell a Pisces Mercury individual, the sky, it's very sunny today. And what they hear is, it's very rainy today. And the same is true in reverse. Like, someone with Pisces Mercury can tell you, it's really rainy today, but what you hear is it's really sunny. There's something that is not computing between a conversation between a Pisces Mercury individual and literally anybody else. So they're more likely to get like lost within conversations, and it can be kind of hard to like keep up with conversations. There's just a lot of misunderstandings, basically. And there's also a lot of like forgetfulness with Mercury and Pisces. So even if you tell them like be there at 7 p.m., they are kind of processing it in the moment, but then come the day of, they're like so convinced that you said meet at 5 p.m. There's something going on with the fact that Pisces is a master projector. So Pisces Mercury people can kind of project onto you whatever it is they want to hear. They're also living in fantasy land and la la land. It makes them really imaginative, so they're brilliant creators. They're brilliant illustrators. They're amazing working with like mediums, like paint, for example. Like they're really good with drawing and like bringing a vision to life on a canvas. They're also the poets of society. So people with Pisces Mercury, they're really, really romantic in their brain. They're the poets. They're also the fantasy novelists. They're the romance novelists. So they do really good with fiction writing. Like, these are the people that, you know, they're also very good with like erotica. They're just very good with their words when they actually have time to think about them and put them on paper. That's kind of the odd thing here, is in an actual conversation happening in real time, they can get kind of lost. But when they're sitting and they're with their thoughts and they're kind of in like isolation, me time, they have time to really think and they're writing from their heart space. They can produce really amazing work, and it's amazing because it combines that imaginative, fantastical nature of Pisces thinking. Like, that's where you can put your projections. You can put your projections on paper. That's where you can enter fantasy la la land. It's hard to be in that space when you're having a conversation about logistics or scheduling or planning or organizing. That's when it gets really tricky. Now, Pisces Mercury, mentally, they're all over the place, and that's because they have a really hard time, like, socially. So they are just, their brain is like soup. It's like a soupy brain with like everything in it. And it can make them be and act in erratic and chaotic ways. Like, their decision-making skills are really impacted by their soupy mind. They have a really hard time knowing what to do, when to do it. They can be immobilized by how much mental chaos is happening in their brain. And they can act in really erratic and inconsistent ways because of it. These people can also struggle with their sense of self. So these people can have like personality disorders, mood disorders. It can just be really hard for them to find a sense of consistency even in their own relationship with themselves. Now, part of this is because they're shape-shifty. So Pisces placements, I don't care where you have them, rising sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, whatever, a personal placement, it's very shape-shifty. They're adaptable, they're a mutable sign after all. So they can change depending on the situation and the social situation at that. So they can get confused as to like what their real identity is and what they believe in, which brings me to my next point. People with Pisces Mercury are more prone to being indoctrinated. I know that sounds kind of extreme. It's cultish energy. They're more prone to just kind of being manipulated into thinking a certain way. So they might have grown up in a hyper-religious environment or an environment where they were not allowed to think for themselves. This is part of why they can have like personality issues or, you know, mood disorders, or they're just lost in themselves. And a lot of the times it's because their own beliefs are discouraged. They're not encouraged to think for themselves. So they can kind of follow along and just be vulnerable and susceptible to what other people want them to think. In age, they can grow out of this, but in age, you know, as they age, they can have like religious trauma as a result. They can have a really strong fear of being manipulated or being kind of coerced into like believing something. So they can become kind of paranoid and overtly skeptical because they're so, and it can make them hard to know who to believe, what to believe. Like they can kind of go the whole other way with it and just become extremely suspicious and skeptical of like what people are telling them. So Pisces Mercury, it's a really, really complex Mercury placement. These people can struggle making sense, which is why they actually do really well in like artistic and creative fields. They can be great singers. They're very romantic. Now, in their social connections, like when they do trust you and it's with their loved ones, they're very intimate. So they're the type of people, they're gonna just tell you what it is, how they're feeling, and they want that in return. They can be really committed to their relationships. They feel very intensely, and the conversations with them can just go really, really deep because of just how much they're feeling and how much they're processing in the world. Now, people with Pisces Mercury can have sleep-related issues. They can have insomnia, lucid dreaming. They do really well with like the spiritual realm and things that transcend material reality. That's part of why like communication is hard for them. They don't do really well with logic and reasoning, Pisces Mercury. They do well with abstract. They do well with subjectivity. They don't do, which is why they're always like, taking what people are saying and turning it into something else. They don't really do well with like facts and reason and logic. They struggle in that department. But because of that, that's what makes them very idealistic and romantic and creative. They can have sleep issues, they can have chronic nightmares, they can have very vivid dreams, they can have prophetic dreams, they can be clairvoyant. They're kind of like the night owls, and having sleep issues and being a night owl, they can have like scheduling issues. Like their daily routine, their daily schedule can be really inconsistent. So it's really important, if you have Pisces Mercury, you have to find a way to have a consistent schedule in life. You will feel a million times better. Like you have to create a sense of security and stability for yourself and everything else will make more sense to you. Like, have a key rack by your door that you put your keys so you always know where they are. Like, little things like that can really go a long way for Pisces Mercury individuals, because they can forget things, they can lose things, they can repress a lot, which is also kind of odd because they do feel very deeply, but they can have a lot of experiences in youth where they are, made to feel really victimized. So they can have a lot of repressed memories and feelings, and it can impact their memory as a whole. And they can be really forgetful. They can be just like not working. They're not in reality. They're a space cadet. That's what they are. They're a space cadet. Now, there are tips and tricks here. If you have Pisces Mercury, you can use that projective nature to your benefit, and you can use that shape-shifting nature to your benefit. Pisces Mercury people can be the sirens. They can be the beautiful mermaid on the rock, enticing the sailors and that. So you can use that kind of naive, out of this world, doe-eyed, innocent, what do I know? What do I believe in? I'm just blah, blah, I'm whatever you want me to be. You can kind of use that to your advantage. And that can happen for some Pisces Mercuries that are like aware, self-aware. You can get to that place. They can use that to get what they want in life. You can play it up. You can play up that naivety, that doe-eyed look, and you can kind of play up the damsel in distress to get what you want. Which kind of brings me to my next thing, which is like Pisces Mercury people can attract people who do want to help them and like save them, especially romantically. But the same is true in reverse. Like, you can be attracted to people in life who need a lot of help. So with Pisces Mercury, you absolutely need social boundaries. It will protect you, it will prevent you from feeling taken advantage of, and you can get to a point in life where you have more social power. And then you kind of call the shots, and you can be the one determining, like, you can eventually get to a point in life where you control how others perceive you. I'm not saying that's necessarily good, I'm not saying it's bad, but you can get to a point where you're the one and you have kind of the upper hand